Got it. Wrong word. Okay, hi everybody. So I'm Jerry Zahn. I'm Lion Jerry Zahn. So this is the Welcome to Wednesday Wellness. Appreciate those of you being here. The goal is to bring the research and make it a resource for you. This is on behalf of the Lions Club International's International Diabetes Program. I want to thank Lydia Petros Jones. She really is the inspiration for doing all of this. Hopefully she can make it tonight. And then our local chapter is the Lions Club International. If you haven't already joined the Lions, you might want to if you're a regular member, because I think you'll get a lot out of it. They really do a good job. I love their motto is "We serve," and that's what I'm doing today. So I'm your host tonight. I'm a family sports medicine doctor. So that means I was good in school, but I was great at recess. And so I went into sports medicine. I teach at the local hospital's residency program, and we're starting a sports medicine program. Along those lines, my goal is with all my patients is to give them lifelong wellness. I mean, that's the goal, is not to be a one-trick pony or a one-hit wonder. And I'm sure Ed can tell us some of the one-hit wonders when he was young. I don't know if Me and You and a Dog Named Boo, those kind of ones. Love that song. But anyway, that's our goal, is to not just have you, and is this a good trout stream or fly fishing stream, Ed? Anyway, but the goal is to have activity. I mean, you want to have a vigorous life. I mean, I sort of joke that I have a disease called adventure deficit disorder. You just want to go have fun, but at the end of the day, your health is your wealth. So what does it take to have lifelong wellness and health? And I do think it goes along with the same thing as what does it take to be successful? And I do think it does take high performance habits. So this is this is Brendan Bouchard, and he writes this book, which I really, really like. And if you're interested, I'm always going to give you some books to listen to and stuff. So don't read, because your ears have way more time than your eyes. But High Performance Habits is a very good book. And again, you can listen to it. But in short, what he advocates is also something that's complementary to me. So obviously I advocate it. But his first thing is, if you want to be high performance, high performers have good habits. So what does it take to have good habits? Well, to have good habits, you need to be in the best shape of your life. How do you do that? How do you get the best shape of your life? And the way you get the best shape of your life, he says in his book, and I quote, "To be the best shape of your life, find the best primary care sports physician and let him health coach you." So what I'm not saying I'm the best, but I am a primary care health or sports medicine physician, and I am trying to health coach you. So along those lines, then, my first rule, I encourage all of you to have lifelong wellness. You need to be a lifelong learner. So just like what you guys are doing, it's very good you're coming to this, because the goal is to keep learning, to keep getting better. You want to be the best at getting better. And I think one of the best things that come around is Audible. So if you don't already have it, get it on your phone so you can listen to a bunch of books. And I can give you a whole slew of books. I can give you the order to listen to them so that you can learn this, become a master, and then, quote unquote, you do you. Because the big challenge we went down this road of we should follow the guidelines. Well, the guidelines don't work because they're for general people, but each of us is different. Did you know that the average temperature I don't know if anyone here been to Joshua Tree, it gets super cold and it gets pretty freaking hot if you've ever been to Joshua Tree in August, but the average temperature is 72. Well, that sounds great, but it's barely ever 72 because it's always one way or the other. So I use that as an analogy that you need to find what works for you in terms of your lifestyle. And my big three on the lifestyle is, what should you eat, but also what should your activity be, and how do you get world-class sleep? Because sleep is really a wonderful drug, and obviously it's not a drug, but it does help you to recuperate and to stay healthy. So along the line of lifelong learning, I have 3 books. If you're new to this, then you might want to, if you haven't already done this, look at these books. So the first book, when I'm getting people down this road, is called The Big Fat Surprise. And The Big Fat Surprise really opened in a very good way. It was a top book in 2014. It was Book of the Year. And it shows you how butter, meat, and cheese belong in a healthy diet. So that tells you what to eat. And then the when to eat really turns out to be very infrequently, and that you use the F word called fasting in your life. And maybe you do a 16-8 where you basically only have lunch and dinner, or maybe you do 1 meal a day, OMAD, and you only eat 1 meal a day, or maybe you throw in a 36-hour fast, or any of those. But I do think the idea is to get away from snacking and get into when you eat, and when you fast, and come up with ideas. And the big thing to me is feast and famine. You're going to have fun with your family. You need to be able to recover. The way you recover is with learning how to do fasting, which is not starvation, we talked about. And then finally, I love this book, Marie Emmerich. I like to think she's a friend. She flew all the way out to meet us and do stuff with us. But her book, Keto Comfort Food, shows you how to make low-carb versions of everything that you love. Pizza, pasta, all of those things. So that works really, really well. So given this wealth of knowledge, a question you might ask yourself if you're a regular this is, how did we get this so wrong? How did we get so confused? Why is the stuff that I'm presenting just different than what everyone else is talking about? So this is someone, if you don't already know his name, you probably should, because he's a very powerful, probably the most powerful person in terms of shaping our dietary history. And so his name is Ancel Keys. He was a physiologist out of Minnesota, but he came up with what's called the 7 country study. And he showed that the death rate was based on how much fat. So if you look at fat down here and you look at deaths, then he had these 7 countries that shows almost a vertical perfect line. The United States sort of being way up at the top, sorry. But the United States is way up here, showing that it's the fat that's doing it to us. So this is what he proposed in 1950s, and that got to be part of the fledgling Heart Association at the time. Now, interestingly, and I'm going to show you a little video about this, he didn't really look at all the other things. What he didn't show was where all the sugar goes and all the other countries that he didn't mention. So what I wanted to bring up is how we got this so wrong. So it's going to switch a little bit here. And this is about 15 minutes of essentially the history of how we got down this road. So let me reshare, because this always goes bad. Share. So can you guys see this at all? Yes, no? Yep, okay. So let me just play, it's about 15 minutes.
Experts have such different...
And he's a neurologist, because all the chronic diseases, heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, but also Alzheimer's, are all due to essentially excessive carbohydrates for the person. So he's actually coming at it from the neurology point of view.
Opinions as to what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, what medication we should take to improve our health. I think what's important is to understand why that person has that opinion. Is that person being paid to generate that opinion? So what is my motivation? Why am I here tonight? Why am I, as a neuroscientist, why do I study cardiovascular disease? So in a sense, I have what I have is a disclosure statement. First of all, I received no funding at all, no payment for any of the research I'm showing you tonight. This really began as a personal crusade of my own. I had extremely abnormal cholesterol, triglycerides, which I've gone into in detail in other talks. But as you can see here, I was in the extreme This is my risk for developing a heart attack 10 years ago, over 15 times likely to develop a heart attack compared to someone with ideal lipids. And I took this very seriously. I was concerned. Even more concerned was my doctor. My doctor on a regular basis was near demanding that I start a regimen of statins as well as other drugs. And I was very concerned. I've been studying neuroscience for decades, but I knew very little actually of cardiovascular disease, and I knew little as to why I was so fat at the time as well. So I felt a little bit like these geese wandering around down the road to try to get to the ultimate in health, epitomized by Jack LaLanne at the end of the road. I wanted to get there. I had no idea how to get there. And in a sense, all I knew about diet was that Atkins said you can eat all the bacon you want and you get nice and thin and you'll be healthy. So as appealing as that was to me, I didn't really believe it. And in the opposition, you have all the plant-based diet gurus who I'd heard they emphasize that saturated or animal fats will clog my arteries and cause me to die at a young age. So I had a choice. I really felt like I could eat meat and die young but happy, or live my life as a vegetarian, a very long but miserable life. And this is really all I knew 10 years ago. I decided that I had to take charge of my own health. I was not going to listen to any of these diet gurus. I decided I need to actually learn the research for myself. I could put my PhD in biology to good use. And so I began with a few papers, which then developed into a few thousand papers and dozens of books on the topic. And I want to acknowledge actually that people that I have such a high regard for, which I have learned from the organizations I've been in and the science writers and the books that they've written. And this is only a partial list of a vast amount of research that I have studied in the past 10 years. And I've distilled that 10 years of learning down to a bit about a little less than an hour, which we'll spend together today, which I'm going to cover as to what it is we need to be concerned about as far as our food, and what do we think really about cholesterol in our blood, and should we lower those cholesterol levels with statins? So essentially we have the diet heart hypothesis, which is the idea that you eat saturated fat, it'll increase your cholesterol, and then an increase in cholesterol will then cause you to have cardiovascular disease. And as you can see here in this cartoon, essentially this is just completely wrong. It was never based on any good science, and it's been perpetuated really by industry, particularly food and the drug industry. And so my first phase, I'm going to talk about saturated fat diet, saturated fat, and how it influences our health. Does it really cause us to get fat, have heart disease? I'm then going to actually talk about the cholesterol, our fear that the cholesterol in our arteries will block them and ultimately give us a heart attack. And then the critical question is, do we need to lower our cholesterol? What's the evidence of the benefit of a lowering of cholesterol, particularly lowering it with the statins, which appear to be wonder drugs, having such a powerful effect on saving people's lives from that cholesterol that clogs their arteries. And finally, I'm going to try to make the point to you that it is not cholesterol. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. So what's the alternative to cholesterol that you need to understand what actually does cause heart disease and stroke? So a little perspective here, and I'm only going to cover the diet briefly because 2 years ago I gave a talk in Ocala, and we've actually had great progress in appreciating that saturated fat does not actually cause heart disease. So this will be a relatively brief section, but this is an incredibly important paper in which Dr. George Thorpe reviewed over 100 years of research, emphasizing that the ideal diet is a low carbohydrate, high fat diet, the best diet for losing weight. So this is in the Journal of the American Medical Association. We knew this in 1957. And here, this is a very important year, 1961. And this is an important finding. And this is an epiphany for me when I just saw this, carbohydrate-induced lipemia. What that means is when you eat carbohydrates, they're converted to fat, and that fat is in your blood. And they're saying how common this is. And it was so powerful, the effect, that they illustrated it by showing someone's blood serum. So in this case, in fact, they say this may surprise some people who don't know the literature. And that lipemic plasma, that is fat in the plasma, occurred when they put a person on a high carbohydrate, low fat diet. And so you can actually see the fat in the serum here. And the same person, in this study of multiple people on different diets, you now have that same person put on a high fat, very low carbohydrate diet. And the same person now you're looking at their serum is clear. They're emphasizing it's from the same person. So it's very clear. We have known for 150 years that a high carbohydrate diet contributes to fat in the blood, contributes to obesity. So that 1961 is important because something else happened in 1961. We have this fellow who I've talked about before. His name is Ancel Keys. And this is 1961. He is on the cover of Time magazine. He is the spokesperson for research in America. He is the dominant figure. And look at what he's saying here in the Time magazine article. Americans eat too much fat, too much saturated fat. It increases blood cholesterol and damages arteries. So Americans need to cut back on the fat to be able to control their cholesterol. Realize this is completely contrary to everything science had shown for the previous century. He made this up. It's amazing. Here's the, he's being interviewed. He is seen as an expert. And I point out as well, he didn't take a single course in cardiovascular disease or nutrition in college. He had a bachelor's degree in economics and a PhD in fish physiology. This is the man that was leading American nutrition science into the 1970s, and he was totally wrong. Now, it would be an anecdote to history to me. You say, well, we know he was wrong. And yet, if you go to the American Heart Association website right now, you will see them demonize saturated fat. They will say the saturated fat increases your cholesterol, which it doesn't. There is no evidence for that. And it will increase your risk for heart disease and stroke. Not only that, they're saying keep your percent of saturated fat very low. They're still recommending margarine over butter. They're completely out of step with modern research.
This is Lumen, the first device for hacking your metabolism with just one breath.
So it was Ancel Keys who came up with this idea of the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet, which supposedly is a diet of the Italians and the Greeks, in which it's very low in fat, lean meat, and olive oil. And that's why we've got the heart there in Italy. Well, let's look at the actual data. Do the data support what Keys said about saturated fat? You actually have data points here from every European nation with the average amount of saturated fat these people consume and the rate of death from heart disease. And what you find is an actually negative correlation. That is, the more saturated fat these people eat, the lower is the risk of heart disease. It's a complete opposite of what Ancel Keys said. It's the opposite of what the American Heart Association says now. And let's take it to an extreme. The most extreme data point are the French. Those horrible anti-American Heart Association French people who have 40% of their calories from fat. And they have the most saturated fat of any country, far more saturated fat in their diet than Americans. And so you have extremely high saturated fat. And I love this quote from T.H. Huxley. He said, the great tragedy of science, the slaying of a beautiful hypothesis by an ugly fact. The entire country of France is an ugly fact. And so what should happen when you have a hypothesis in science is you change the hypothesis when the data don't fit the hypothesis. But what does the American Heart Association, what do nutritionists in general do? They just sweep it aside and they call it a paradox. We're going to take 60 million people and just put them into a box and say, well, we just can't figure that out. It's a paradox. Let's ignore them. And what is it that the French consume? So they have extreme amounts. They eat animal products, liver, and animal food. And in fact, the preference of the French, the three primary ingredients in French food are butter, butter, and butter. And liver. So with all that saturated fat, all the French women look like her. But what is so annoying about her is she's so terribly thin. So the French paradox is that people have a low rate of heart disease in France despite consuming so much saturated fat. But another aspect of it is how terribly thin they are. And so when you look at obesity around the world, Americans are the fattest people in the world. That's us right up there. And we are still the fattest with the latest news. And we eat the most low-fat and non-fat food of any people in the world. And here are those damn French, less than 10% of them are obese. So they're not only not having heart attacks, they're also not fat. So it's completely inconsistent with the diet heart hypothesis. You still see that fear of egg yolks. Egg yolks, we have this love-hate relationship with the egg yolks. So much cholesterol, so much saturated fat, but they taste so good. And so what you've got is entire industry based on the idea that the egg yolk will kill you. And this right now, you go to the Cleveland Clinic, this is their recommendation. Egg whites have, egg yolks have cholesterol and saturated fat. You want to avoid that. There's absolutely no science to justify this fear of the egg yolk. And so in fact, I give you an example, a meta-analysis of a large number of studies, which shows absolutely no relation between egg consumption and risk of heart disease. But to take it a step further, there's a magnificent study that was published with two groups, both on a low carb, really good diet. But to one group, they added 3 eggs a day, which happens to be 3 times more per day than the American Heart Association recommends, because if they say you have to fear cholesterol in the egg. Well, the group that had the extra eggs per day showed a greater weight loss, greater reduction in blood pressure, a greater increase in actually what's called the good cholesterol, which when it's higher, you see less heart disease. And there was no overall difference in total cholesterol or LDL, which is called the bad cholesterol. So in fact, consuming eggs is something you should have if you're at risk for heart disease. Again, completely opposite to the way people have been told about this. Now, the epidemiological work is truly atrocious. This is when you hear on the news that people who eat lots of meat die young. That's the epidemiological work. And here is one example. It sounds so impressive. 500,000 people, you find out what they eat. Those that eat the most meat, they die young. That's the lesson. Don't eat red meat. Well, this is one example of a truly atrocious study. What they found is a very small increase in mortality, cancer mortality, and cardiovascular disease mortality in assessing the diet of 500,000 people. But when you actually read the study, it's remarkable to see the findings. This is what those people look like. This tells you about their lifestyle. Paper after paper demonizing red meat shows, well, what kind of people eat the most hot dogs and the most bologna? These are people basically who are sedentary, they're fat, and they smoke. Okay? And along with the hot dogs, they're eating a whole lot of bread, and they're drinking a lot of soda and having ice cream. So the meat-eating lifestyle is unhealthy. And it's remarkable to me that these people don't separate the lifestyle from the specific food ingredients. And so the carefully conducted studies have shown there is no relation of red meat consumption to heart disease. But there was actually one other thing about this study that I need to point out. The people who ate the most meat actually ended up in the most car accidents. So there's no other conclusion than to say red meat will give you a heart attack and it makes you a bad driver. This is the problem, not distinguishing association from causation. It's the lifestyle that is unhealthy for the people who eat the most bologna. So here I am actually now on that road 10 years later, understanding a bit more about the science. The important thing about the Atkins diet, or in general, low carb diet, is when these studies are done, it is a single manipulation. You have overweight people. You don't change anything other than restricting carbohydrates. They lose weight, the biomarkers all move in the right direction. Now, the low-fat, plant-based diet researchers, as typified here by Dean Ornish, the studies consistently involve multiple factors. You have people who explicitly are taught how to reduce stress. They exercise more. They're told to eat less sugar. They stop smoking. Oh, and by the way, they become vegetarians. So what is it that's helping their health? Well, what they like to point out is that they're cutting out the red meat. But there's so many manipulations that go on, so many factors. And every single study involving the plant-based lifestyle is so terribly flawed because you can't point to any one factor that makes the difference. And I have to say, I've written to Dean Ornish many times, and he doesn't seem to appreciate that I've told him how terribly flawed his studies are. But the bottom line is the low carb diet works, and also scientifically, it's better. And so I'm kind of bringing this to a close without covering too much because we have made great progress. And this editorial just came out last month summarizing so much of the recent work written by a cardiologist as well as other outstanding scientists in the field. And bottom line is the top line. The bottom line is the top line. That's right there saying saturated fat really does not cause heart disease. The reviews are out now and the tide is clearly turning. And so now it is okay to eat butter again and not to have to eat margarine. And so to bring this first section to a close, what is very clear is the good science has shown that saturated fat per se does not increase cholesterol, thereby increasing the risk of heart disease. Now we get to the cholesterol, okay? Is that cholesterol in your arteries therefore going to clog it and cause you to have a heart attack? Well, I was at a talk recently given by Eric Westman in which he talked about how extraordinary the low carb diet is to reverse the metabolic syndrome. People lose weight, their blood pressure drops, everything moves in the right direction. A clinician pointed out this one increase right here, which goes in the opposite direction, that's LDL. So this person is incredibly healthy, but it's because the LDL, the bad cholesterol, went up. Well, now they're at greater risk for heart disease. So that's the great concern. This is a fantastic review of just how wonderful low carb diet is. But the LDL is the great concern people have. Well, that comes in part from a fear of cholesterol. And this is a very influential study published in Journal of the American Medical Association, 1986. And what they showed and studied hundreds of thousands of people, followed them for many years and looked at their rate of heart attacks according to cholesterol levels. So you have people with extremely low to extremely high cholesterol. And what you find is this increase in the rate of death from heart disease. Any small increase in cholesterol is associated with an increase in death from heart disease. And they made that point in their paper, that a 1% increase in cholesterol is associated with a 2% higher risk. So this is part of where that fear of cholesterol comes from. This is a frightening graph. So I actually looked at the data and said, well, what's the actual risk? How many people actually had heart attacks? How many actually died? And so I'm now graphing the actual data from the paper. And so here you are looking at the blue bars. The blue bars show the actual percent of people who did not develop heart disease based on their cholesterol level. So the lowest to the highest, this is the actual rate of people who did not develop heart disease. And they're almost all at 100%, meaning almost no heart disease. Well, to make this a little easier for you visually, I've drawn a line right at 100%. And you see that microscopic difference there? That is a 400% increase in risk of dying of a heart attack. That's what this red line is created from. This is derived from that. Now, how did they do that? And why did they do it is another question. So when you look at the actual data, almost all people down at the bottom here did not die of coronary heart disease, 99.7%. So 0.3% died of coronary heart disease. At the highest level of cholesterol, 98.7% did not die of heart disease. So across the entire range of cholesterol, the difference is 1% in the rate of people dying. And so 1.3% of the people died. So how do you turn that into a 400% difference? Well, you take the extremes. You take this 1.3% and you divide it by 0.3%, that is 4.13. And that's how you come up to this red line up here. You create a 400% increase in heart disease by dividing one ratio into another. And this in great part is why people have feared cholesterol, because of this kind of data manipulation. Now let's go further. Okay, this is the highest level of cholesterol, and you see almost no heart disease in these people. So let's actually look at what's called a disease in which people have extraordinarily high cholesterol, 2 to 3 times normal levels of cholesterol. This is called familial hypercholesterolemia. And any medical student can tell you that if you got this disease, you're going to die young of heart disease because your cholesterol is so extraordinarily high. And so here you have a paper from around 1951 showing high cholesterol is ultimately going to kill you because the cholesterol gets deposited into your artery. Well, so therefore we make prediction. People that have this disease should die young from heart disease. And if we lower their cholesterol, they should be able to live longer. Well, here's the very first paper looking at longevity in people with this disease. 1966 in this prestigious medical journal of medicine, in which they looked at a large number of people diagnosed with familial hypercholesterolemia. No evidence that having extraordinarily high cholesterol shortens someone's life, that people with this supposed disease live into the 7th and 8th decades. And there are many other studies I can show you. It's only because of time limit that I'm saying this is not an anomaly. So I'll show you another one in which you have cholesterol levels in people, and then you look over 20 to 30 years, and you look at their health and longevity. So here is a study in which I had blood levels over the course of 20 years, followed a large number of older people, and what they found was greater mortality in the older people who had low cholesterol. A significantly greater mortality in those who had low cholesterol compared to those who had the highest cholesterol. And I love how their interpretation. We have been unable to explain our results. This is really great. They're saying, you know, everybody told us cholesterol is supposed to kill these people, and they're living so damn long. And so there are numerous other studies. Again, this is not an anomaly. This is consistent in the literature. And in fact, to summarize this, I've worked with some outstanding colleagues, and we published this paper last year in British Medical Journal, in which we reviewed every paper ever published on LDL cholesterol and longevity. And what we found is not a single paper in which people died young, having high LDL. Every single paper, the people with the highest LDL lived as long and even longer than the people with low LDL. And that is summarized here. And this is a quote from our paper. Since elderly people with high LDL live as long or longer, then why would anyone want to lower their LDL and shorten their lives?
So anyway, I'll stop there. But I just thought that at least you can get introduced to all of that. The big thing is that we got down this road because of essentially a lot of factors, but a lot of it comes down to, sorry, let's see, I'll just stop. How do I stop share? Let's see. Guess I could go back to, I don't know, how do I stop share? Am I okay now? I've stopped sharing, right? Yeah. So anyway, I'll stop there because obviously this can go on, but his name is David Diamond. And if you're interested, you could look at all his stuff. But the main criticism of a low carbohydrate nutrition program has to do with the LDL cholesterol and all of that. So if you say you're on, I won't use the K word, but ketogenic, but I use low carb. But the big thing is that everyone thinks that they have to eat a lot of high fat, and that just is not really the case. If you're especially diabetic, your main challenge is to get healthy. And the challenge is that most of us are intolerant to carbohydrates, just like some people are like lactose intolerant, they can't do milk. But a lot of us are carbohydrate intolerant. We just don't do well with carbohydrates. And it's not just what you eat, it's your lifestyle. So what I am trying to encourage is people to take control of their health, know that everyone's different, and that you should look at all the things I'm presenting, look at other things that you look at, and really try anything that you think would be reasonable for you, and then let's measure. A lot of you in this audience are patients of mine. You know that's my philosophy. And we take your measurements, and then I show it to you. And if you're doing good, I praise you. And if you're bad, I nudge you. Okay, I do nag you. Tom will tell you I nag you. But I think that the big thing that we have now is we have the ability to be very personalized. And I don't think one size fits all. And I don't think it's just diet. I think it's your lifestyle. So diet, exercise, sleep, stress management. I even look at light, water, electromagnetism, and frankly, community engagement. Those of you that are on this call will probably live longer because together we do a lot better. And I can show you some of the longevity studies on what's called social engagement, which is probably one of the biggest challenges in this COVID era, because basically this whole generation will be very challenged to be socially integrated. Think of the last time you went to Disneyland where it's packed. I mean, I would argue that for generation, or at least for this generation, people are going to be very nervous to be in a crowded room. And in truth be told, we humans like that. What COVID has exposed, this COVID epidemic, and luckily it's coming down now, but for a while we had 100% at the hospital. Everyone we tested was positive for COVID. The big challenge is it preys on people who are not healthy, on the metabolically unfit. And COVID loves carbs, and a lot of diabetics love carbs, and that combination is bad. And most of the deaths have been in diabetics. So for that reason, I'm really pushing this whole agenda that if we can really improve our lifestyle lifelong, we'll decrease our risk of heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, and Alzheimer's, which is considered type 3 diabetes. And so for me, that's sort of what I wanted to present tonight, that number one, I wanted to show you that eating this way is actually quite healthy. It is very confusing. That's why I want to present it. And then I just wanted to open it up for people to share their pearls and pitfalls if they have that, and any other comments. So with that, I will be quiet. Anybody have any thoughts at all?
I feel like I'm watching the news on TV and they're talking about fake news, because they get one side of things and then another side, and we've got to sort it out. I haven't read the books you just mentioned, but I suspect they will help.
Yes, and I that's a great analogy, this whole idea about fake news. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about you. It has nothing to do with what I say or other folks, and understand, you know, there is a lot of hidden agendas, but you are you. And the best way is, I think, is kind of see what seems reasonable, try it and measure. And if you're getting leaner and fitter, then you're on the right track. If you're not the best version of you, you know, harshly, your diet sucks. You have to change it, something. And it could be carbs, calories. I look at cortisol. I think stress is the X factor. A lot of us are highly stressed. And it's amazing how little food you actually need to do really well. So for all these reasons, yeah, I appreciate those comments, Thomas.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Mike, you have anything to say? You're always pretty good. Yeah, you have to unmute, sorry.
Well, yes, doctor, thank you very much. You know, I wish I would join these sessions earlier, but I'm okay now because this is my third session, actually fourth session, 2 downloaded and 2 attended. Doctor, I have been very active, very, very active in the last 30 years. And wrongly, I was dieting the way that this gentleman was talking about. I was on the vegetable. God knows how many yolk I dumped on the trash. I only ate white portion of it. Finally, on the treadmills in 2010, I was pedaling, and all the sudden realized my heartbeat is so high and I can't bring it down. It was heart attack. So being so careful, doing exercise, doing that kind of diet, ended up to be heart attack. So there was something wrong. And I couldn't figure it out until I met you. And if you remember, I said, Doctor, what's his name? He was who was the eat meat. I told Atkins. I told you
Atkins.
Atkins died of heart attack. He told me no, he didn't die. Because I didn't know. The message to me was this guy introduced this diet and died because of it. And so I was wrong. So I really appreciate what you did to me. I am feeling great. I'm in a good weight right now. And as you know, my personal diabetes pretty much under control. I'm only taking one pill a day, but I am in a good shape. And another thing, you know, I always had A1C. During my time, it was 7 was the good number. Of course, it wasn't right. Now I'm on 6 something, 6.4, which is still trying to reduce it. Anyway, thank you very much for having these sessions, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, good, thanks. Anybody else? Stacy, what's the latest with you? Stacy, you doing okay?
Got on mute, Stacy. On mute.
I think I'm having some technical difficulties.
That's okay.
I'm having some technical difficulties, I think.
Okay. Anybody else have anything or any pearls or pitfalls they want to share with us?
I have a question, and that is, you said don't snack. And sometimes I start to get, if I'm fasting, I get hungry. And one way I stop that is I'll eat some vegetables or a cherry tomato, a couple of those. Is that okay or not?
Well, my opinion is not, because those are carbohydrates and they actually stimulate your appetite. I mean, obviously you can do what you're doing, but I do like the idea that you might want to try one of the like teas, or possibly, it sounds really weird, but warm salt water is actually quite good. Or frankly, I drink salted coffee, but that's just what I do. You could also, some people, it sounds super weird, but you could take like either cheese or like lunch meat and put butter inside, and you could eat that. It sounds super weird, and dip it in mayo. I mean, something that's a little more fatty is kind of decrease your appetite. You know, the goal is to learn how to what we call surf the hunger, because hunger is momentary, and if you get active and get your mind off it, it goes away. So that's all part of the journey of trying to get yourself better and better, so your body burns fats and preserves muscle.
I like that one.
Yeah, and then as Dr. Winkelstein says, is you can get yak butter. He bought me some yak butter. I was always jonesing for some yak butter, and he was able to find it on Amazon. But that's what you could try. The other thing that I use, my go-to little snack, is chicharrones, which is because it sort of tastes like a chip. So any of those are things to look at, but I think the fact that you're trying to do the fasting is, I think, a very good thing.
And I like chicharrones.
Good.
Shelley, you raised your hand. Did you have something?
Yeah, to add to what Dr. Hezon said, one of the key things too is oftentimes people mistake the hunger, the thirst mechanism for hunger. And so if you're not sure if you're hungry or thirsty, drink a glass of water, and in 20-30 minutes later, if you're not hungry, it probably really was you were thirsty. And most people don't drink enough water. So one way to kind of make sure you do is to drink it like on the top of each hour. Or my friends, like every time I look at my watch, I told myself I have to drink drink some water. So those are some tricks, but it is hard to fast. And sometimes it's better to start with a smaller time frame and push it out. So, you know, start with 16 hours and then see if you can go to 24. But I wouldn't try an automatic 24 if you've never done that type of fast before.
Yeah, I usually start with just don't eat after dinner, and then try not to snack, go to 3 meals a day. And then if that's not too bad, go to 2 meals a day, lunch and dinner. And then every now and then, if you get busy, skip your lunch and then just go to dinner. And then that gives you a lot of little options as to what to do. And I mean, if you really, really think about it, if you really want to lose a ton of weight in the most painless way, is you just eat a little bit of food before you fall asleep. It's hard to fall asleep when you're hungry. Remember the old days, you know, go up to bed without dinner. But if you could just have a little bit of food before dinner, you could eat the least amount of calories with the least amount of hunger with the max amount of weight loss. So all of that is just kind of fun stuff. Along those lines, maybe Jay, you could, and thank you, Shelley, for that comment. I appreciate that, because when you go low carb, you urinate a lot, you pee a lot more water and salt, and that's why people get lightheaded and dizzy. So you want to replace that, and that a lot of times, you're right, is you think it's hunger when it's actually thirst. And our body's good at getting rid of extra stuff. It can get rid of extra water, it can get rid of extra salt as long as you have good kidneys and liver. It can't get rid of extra sugar. That's why sugar is so deadly. That being said, Jay, could you maybe share your experience, because you've been a little model citizen for the last month?
Well, yeah, I'm always interested to hear what everybody has to say, and everybody has their tricks and techniques, and I'll share a couple with everybody. It's going to sound gross. My wife thinks it's gross, but I recently, at your behest, completed a 36-hour fast, and I do it fairly rigidly. I don't deviate at all. It's just water, coffee, and I get through the 36 hours. But I will say, I have zesty dill pickles in my refrigerator, and I love to go get a little swig of that pickle juice. And it just it has spice in it, and it just I lose the hunger edge. And the other thing I was doing during that recent fast was, every time I'd get hungry, I'd go out and walk. So that particular day, I wound up with 12,000 steps, because if I got hungry, I said, you know what, let's go out and put in 15 quick minutes. And, so there's a variety of ways. I think it'd be interesting sometime to hear what other people's techniques are for dealing with their hunger pangs, when fasting. I found it very easy to go on a 16-8 fasting regimen, and I currently adhere pretty strongly with an 18-6, which is basically, I don't eat much after 6 or 7, and I don't eat again until afternoon. And that's where I'm at currently.
Can you share how you've done this last month?
Yeah, this last month I've lost 20. Actually, it's been about 6 weeks. I've lost 20 pounds. In the most recent week, however, I will say, it seems that I'm stuck in a 2-pound range, where I'm kind of going back and forth between 21 pounds off, 19 pounds off, and it's kind of running back and forth. This morning I was back to the 21 pounds down. So, we've had good success thus far. However, and my son, who is, was a collegiate athlete and very diet conscious, he suggested something good. And he told me today, Dad, try switching it up, get off of the routine you've been on. And maybe if you're going to eat twice a day, switch the times you're eating a little bit, and that might help. So it's ups and downs and plateauing, and currently I'm plateauing.
Right. So, we're kind of working through that. My big deal is, when in doubt, if you hit any of those, learn how to fast longer. Of all the things you can learn, safe, prolonged fasting is your go-to thing, because it literally kind of cures all evils. And it is a technique that you need to learn. You want to be quite safe with it, and we can help you with that. But of all the things you can learn, because then you can enjoy your life and yet still recover. And your goal is to figure out, how can I become the best version of you? And that's what we can kind of help. Well, thank you, Jay, very much for that. I look forward to more of your success. We do have one of our students, Jonathan. I may hit you up a little bit. So Jonathan, I just kind of met him today. Maybe you could tell us a little about your story, and then also what your thoughts are, because this is your first time at this. And sort of what you're what you're applying for, that kind of thing.
Hi, hi everybody. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and learn as much as I can. So I'm currently pursuing a career as a PA. I had a pretty interesting journey Sorry, am I doing this right too? I don't want to
Yeah,
like
no, that's
go
good.
off track or subject.
Yeah, so PA means physician assistant, so
Yes,
it's going to
physician
be a
assistant.
healthcare provider.
Yeah. I've always had a passion for helping people, and at an early age, I became interested in the medical field. I started off as an EMT, and then life kind of led me into the dental field, and then I find myself being drawn back to medical again. And I fortunately met a dentist who was a nurse, and she connected me with Dr. Izan. So here I am, just trying to learn as much as possible, and it's so cool. I don't know how much many of you believe in like fate and like serendipity, but I just I temp all over the place and network meeting dentists. I met another dentist who lost a lot of weight. He was talking to a patient during an exam, and he was telling me how I didn't get the specifics, but he said they got the age of his arteries, and they said he was like a 70-year-old. And then he changed his diet, he changed his lifestyle. Even the patients were calling him skinny mini. And he recommended a book called, I want to ask you guys too, your opinion. He recommended a book called How Not to Die. And I don't know if you guys heard about that book yet. I guess the guy who did Nutritional Facts wrote it. And it's supposedly a lifestyle book about kind of natural remedies. I'm sorry. Is someone? I thought I heard someone talking. Oh, I think you're muted, Dr. Izan.
So yeah, I apologize. Yeah, you're right. So maybe what have you been exposed to in terms of nutrition so far? Because you have three associate degrees. How much nutrition have you had?
You know, honestly, I took a nutrition class as a prerequisite to get into dental hygiene, and then there were some there's a nutritional class part of my dental hygiene degree, and it was more dental related about like carbs and saliva consistency and like the pH of your mouth and stuff like that. I'm really more interested though in like the body and stuff too. And honestly, this is a little bit embarrassing. I'm 31 years old and I have pretty high cholesterol, so everything just seems to be coming together. And I've been myself working on reducing that. So I started running now. So I'm up to like 5K.
We're losing you. Sorry. We lost you. So anyway, he's a student. Can everybody hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's a student that we're just getting exposed to. So I try to mentor quite a few students to try to get them into all of this. Yeah, we lost you. I think your bandwidth is low. It's saying.
Oh no, I don't know if I should move around.
No. So anyway, well, thank you very much for being here. And that's our goal, is to introduce the new young professionals to this. So we have a couple more minutes. So thank you very much, Jonathan. I look forward to working with you.
It's a pleasure.
Anybody else have any pearls or pitfalls they want to share with our support group?
I have a question for Shelley. Shelley, what do you find when people ask you, because I know you deal with nutrition and things like that, when they plateau about a weight loss? What do you have help them with, and how do you recommend things?
Well, like Dr. Hezon mentioned earlier, it's multifactorial. So it can be stress, poor sleep, the food you're eating, the timing of it. So it really just kind of depends on the individual. But oftentimes if somebody hits a plateau or their weight starts going back up, look at stress, look at sleep, because cortisol can play a big role in that too. And then just, and everybody's body is individualized. So what one diet may work, or, certain foods may work for one, it may not work for others. So you just got to play with the foods as well.
All right. I think we're coming to the top there. Anybody else have anything they want to share? Lynette, do you have anything you want to share?
Hi, Dr. Hezon.
Hi.
I was just listening to everybody. It's so interesting, all the journeys. But I guess two things that helped me was the blood work. because I'm always a cynic, but I'm always wanting to learn, and it doesn't lie. So I just stuck with what you said, and the change has been phenomenal. And I've lost 25 pounds, and it's been life-changing. That, and then the sleep thing. Sleep was a struggle for me, the age that I am, all the hormonal changes, and I've just kept working at it, tried CBD, a couple different things, and magnesium, and that has really helped, and that has made a big difference as well. I think everything's improved since I've been sleeping better. So just don't give up, keep plugging away. Consistency is king, unfortunately. Dang it.
That's great, Linda. Thank you. Thank you. You're a star. And then finally, maybe we'll end on Jennifer. You had your hand up?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. When you do your request for blood work, do you generally include cortisol levels?
I do not. One of the challenges is a lot of times insurance won't officially pay for it unless there's a reason.
Okay.
So it's not a usual panel. If anyone has any question, it's actually great to do it, but you have to measure it first thing in the morning. That's a great question. And if people have concern about that, because the same thing, we don't measure insulin levels, but they're very helpful to do. I mean, if it was a, sort of, you could do anything, you would do those, because as I'm trying to point out, it's not so much calories, it's hormones. And the two hormones are insulin and cortisol. So that's very good questions.
So we could pay for that out of pocket if we wanted to.
Or if we just say, hey, I'm concerned about my cortisol level, I'm concerned, I'm under stress. I just have to document the reason why, and then I can, we can fight for you.
I'll be making a virtual appointment. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. I think we're at 8 o'clock. Andy, what do you think? And Alan and Renee?
Yep, I got 7:59, so we were definitely at 8 o'clock. So
well, I really appreciate everyone. I really looking forward to any feedback. Otherwise, I'll just kind of keep plugging along. What I'm trying to do is build on things. And now that we have the YouTube channel, we'll start to put all these things up. And please feel free to invite anyone. Any chronic disease, I think, would benefit from you all. I mean, you guys are all inspirational to me, so I can imagine what you are to other people too. So this is really, really exciting. And again, I thank you guys all for taking some time out to do this. So,
Well, thank you.
all right.
Thank you. It was great. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.